Well, good morning and welcome to the Tenacious Leader interview and the Strength and Leadership series. We are interviewing Dave Rendall today, the author of The Freak Factor. He's a stand-up comedian and a management professor. I'm looking forward to digging into the content as we talk about how to develop your niche factor for 2015. As a business strategist and author myself and speaker, I understand the dynamics of how clients and companies in this upcoming year it's going to be even more essential for them to find those things that they do well and understand what the constraints that get put on them because of other external influences. So I'm thrilled that Dave has some real personal experience as well as some interesting stories to tell about how flaunting your weaknesses can bring out your strengths. So Dave, let me bring you up for an introduction here. So Dave, tell us a little bit about what got you here.
Yeah, the simplest version is, and it's where the freak factor came from, is I spent my whole life getting in trouble because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, or do what I was told, and now I get paid to stand up, talk, and run my own business. So all of the things that people told me were the worst things about me were, in fact, the best things about me. Unfortunately, I had to figure that out on my own, and then when I did, I started to wonder whether that might be true for other people as well. That's when I started researching the Freak Factor book, developing the assessment, and finding stories and examples of all sorts of other people who also either discovered or had success because they figured out that their biggest weaknesses were also their biggest strengths. And so instead of trying to fix what everyone said was wrong with them, they amplified those things, they flaunted those things, and became more successful.
I love that. And when I met Dave, we were at a conference with about 800 people down in San Jose area. And interesting how, one of the shortest people, I don't know that I was the shortest person, but one of the shortest people at the conference runs into one of the most tallest people at the conference. And we became friends and strategic partners. I just, when you get like minds together. Because when I heard that story, I thought of, I'm an entrepreneur. I kind of became into consulting through the organic way of giving information, just kind of being able to do what I do naturally for free, but being told don't do that because you don't make money at that. And really living most of my life outside of my body because I was trying to be something that I wasn't, what was expected to be. So the dynamic of understanding your strengths and your weaknesses and how they show up and the names you put on them is so critical for confidence and personal mastery in terms of professional and even in purpose-driven careers. So tell me a little bit about how you've made that switch, or some of the elements that you coach people on how to pursue those weaknesses. And what are some factors that you?
Yeah, so there's 7 basic steps, and it starts with awareness. So the first thing to do is to figure out what your strength and weakness combinations are, identify your strengths, identify your weaknesses. And then the assessment I developed shows you how the strengths and weaknesses are connected. A simple example is somebody who's persistent. That's a strength, but you're certainly going to be criticized for being stubborn when you're a persistent person. And so when you hear that criticism of being stubborn, then you think, well, I need to be less stubborn. I need to be more flexible. I need to let things go. And yet persistent people tend to have success at precisely the point that they've gone beyond the point that most people think is reasonable, which is when we start calling it stubborn. And so when you try to fix your stubbornness, you lose some of your persistence. And so once we can see that clearly, to see that the reason I'm getting in trouble for not sitting still and being quiet is because I'm good at standing up and talking, and that if I, in fact, fix this, I lose this. So once we have that awareness, that's the first step. And then the next one is acceptance, to see that this is who I am. It's good, it's not bad. And so stop trying to change it. Stop trying to fix it. I think a lot of people have heard about positive psychology and strengths-based leadership. I think the reason people don't apply it more is because they still have that nagging question of, well, if I don't fix my weaknesses, I bet something bad is going to happen. So if I can see that they're two sides of the same coin, that they're connected, then it changes the way that I approach them. And so then the next step, awareness, then acceptance, then appreciation. So making sure that I don't just, well, I guess I'm stuck with this. Like you said, you're short, I'm tall, I hit my head a lot, you can't reach things. Acceptance says, well, this is who I am and I can't change it. Appreciation says, this is who I am and that's fantastic. And so recognizing the upside that goes with the downside, the advantages that go with the disadvantages, that's really important. And then once you've done that, it's time to start, and once you've changed the way you think about yourself, then it's time to change the way you actually behave. So if I believe that this was good, not bad, I understand what it is, I accept it, I stop trying to change it, and I believe it's good, then I would turn up the volume. I call that amplification. Instead of trying to turn the volume down, I'd be turning the volume up. Instead of trying to do less, I'd try to do more. So not only am I not trying to fix my weaknesses, I'm actually saying that, wow, if I got more persistent, people would actually see me as more stubborn. If I get better, I'm going to seemingly get worse at the same time. Am I willing to do that? And so that's amplification. I mean, I try not to talk too much about my story, but I mean, I get paid. The only way I get paid is to stand up and talk to people all over the world. I spoke in 6 different countries this year. I did 75 presentations in 50 cities, traveled over 200,000 miles. My parents called me motor mouth. I get paid to do the thing that people spent their entire life. I went pro in the very area that people told me to stop doing. And so that's what I'm talking about with amplification. The next step is alignment. So we need to find that right fit between who we are and what we do. If you turn up the volume and you're in the wrong spot, it doesn't necessarily make anything better. If I was trying to be a counselor and I was supposed to be listening and interacting with people all day, my amplification wouldn't be successful because I'm in the wrong spot. So too often we're trying to fit in. Even in your case, you're helping people with their own businesses sometimes. We create a business and then we act as though we've got to be an adult, we've got to be a professional, we have to do things we don't want to do because that's what adults do. Instead of saying, it's my business, why can't I make it fit who I am? So we either need to find the right fit or we need to create the right fit for who we are. And then that's the next step, which is avoidance. If I find that alignment, one of the only ways I can do that is if I stop doing those things that don't fit. I avoid, I deliberately let go of those things that aren't the right fit for me. And then the last step is, well, what do I do if it needs to be done and I can't do it? And that's affiliation. So how do I find people who are strong where I'm weak? How do I find people who have what I don't have? And so that's the process. I need to see myself differently and then start behaving differently based on that. And I think that's where success and effectiveness, but also like you said, when you're living outside of your body, I think that's where fulfillment and happiness comes from as well.
Well, and letting that driver where you find that you're a square peg in a round hole and you're really, instead of settling, instead of allowing that to be the norm, and I guess this is just the way it is. We have these aspirations that life will change when I have a lot of money or when I'm married to the right person, or then we think, well, those external factors will change, when really the congruency comes from within, from owning our identity. I mean, I believe our success code is embedded in our DNA, that we actually have everything we need to actually serve the world in such a greater way than we do because we're in conflict, because the messaging and when I hear that, again, I hear that story and how many times I was told to quit speaking, quit writing, quit developing step programs to say, if you do this first, this step gets easier, and quit doing that because you don't get paid for that. And then I end up developing a company around those things that I love to do 12 years ago, and I'm still consulting. And I'm being an entrepreneur, which I used to limit myself. You can really only do one thing. Well, you know what? Actually, some people are wired to do more than one thing and do it well. So it certainly increased my fulfillment factor, but it's also helped me align with that purpose and that bigger picture that drives me as well. So what do you see in terms of the radar for 2015 when you think about business and the needs in the market, and how some of the stumbling blocks that happen when people are projecting what they need to do? I'm a firm believer that this next year it's going to be important to drill down on who you serve and how you show up and how you flaunt your weakness, so to speak. So what are some of your observations in that area?
Well, I think, like you said, about authenticity and congruence, I think customers are looking for that as well. And I think customers can tell not just if the person behind the business is authentic and congruent, but also if the business itself is authentic and congruent. And so you can apply a lot of these same concepts to the way you market your business, to the way you design the things that you do within your business. No business is perfect. No business does everything well. But too many people try to position themselves as the low-cost leader, but the high-quality leader, but the luxury leader, but the value leader, and they try to act as though they're everything. But you can't be BMW and Kia at the same time. You can't be Walmart and Target at the same time. And so I think part of this in business is that customers, and especially with online reviews and with social media, they can see through and can share very quickly brands that aren't authentic and that aren't congruent. And so I think one of the things we have to do is ask ourselves, if first of all, if we're applying this to ourselves, but then also look, is who I am being lived out through my business? And am I telling myself the honest truth about what I offer, who I serve, and what I do? Because that's another part. You can't make everyone happy on a personal level, and also from a business standpoint, you can't make everybody happy. So I think one of the questions asked in 2015 is, who do I not care about? Who am I not trying to sell to? Who am I, not only do I not want to sell to, who am I happy to make upset? Who am I happy to turn down? Who am I happy to share their negative reviews of me and say, these kind of people don't like what I do, and that's exactly why I do what I do, because I'm never going to make those people happy, because I don't want to make those people happy. And in fact, if those people liked what I was doing, I might be on the wrong track. And so being able to take that authenticity and live it through the business, because I think, again, customers are more aware than they ever were before. They have access to more information than they've ever had before. And if you're not living out who you really are, you're trying to hide things, you're trying to shade things, you're trying to spin things, pretty soon people are going to find out about that, and the whole thing's going to come crumbling down.
That's right. That's right. Wow, that is such a, when we think about that counterintuitive, which I'm finding more and more this last year, is some of the counsel and advice as we're pulling back from situations to take a different look, is to really come at things from a counterintuitive approach.
Yeah.
And wow. Well, with the distress and I kind of look at both sides, as you've kind of known me over the years, is that, one, there's this great need in the world. Crisis happening, things happening all over the world, things happening in our own communities that our hearts break for, that crosses our mind, boy, somebody should do something about that. And what I see is that the more we step up to the sphere that we're called to, and that really stepping out to bring that unique thinking and set, whether we're developing a widget that's going to solve a problem, whether we're creating an experience, or whether we've actually been able to synthesize and help people process to create outcomes that they desire. It's even more important that we kind of drop the extraneous. And I love that question. Who are you? Who do you not want to serve? Do you not want to serve?
Well, and I think that's part of the acceptance part too. What you were saying is, if there's a bigger purpose for what we're doing, that's living inside of us already. And so denying who I am and trying to be somebody else says, I don't care about my true purpose. I want to define it somehow externally, allow others to define it. I want to choose to do something other than that what I've been designed for. So I think part of the acceptance is saying, if this is who I am, then alignment, where can I use that to have the biggest impact in the world? Instead of saying, I wish I was more attractive, or I wish I was more wealthy, or I wish I'd been to amazing schools, or I wish I'd grown up in a different area, or I wish I had different friends, or I wish I was taller, or I wish I was shorter, or I wish I was whatever. Mm-hmm. Who am I? Who needs that? And how can I serve those people? How can I use who I am and what I do best, what I like to do, and what I do well to serve the world? Instead of starting out there with purpose, I think we need to start in here with purpose.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Totally agree. Our identity drives everything. Everything. So let me ask you a quick question. What do you think are some of the challenges that a person, a couple of things that'll pop up when a person's really trying to exert themselves in either their weakness, as you call it, because it's something they're doing naturally, refer to as natural strengths. What are some of the strengths that pop up?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is you're going to get more negative feedback and resistance from the people around you in the early stages, and that's why it's so important to be really clear about who you are and what works and what fits, and get this mindset that I'm not going to make everybody happy anyway. That's not what this is about. And so not looking externally for that reinforcement, but look internally, and also be willing to recognize that most people don't see it this way, And also, they're trying to get from you what they want from you by defining you in a certain way. And so when people criticize you, they're saying, I don't like you the way you are, and I would like it better if you were something different. They're not saying who you are is bad and it isn't going to be effective in the world. Even if they say it that way, what they really mean is I don't like it. I did a presentation in Australia, and this woman walked up to me who was supposed to help me, find the place where I was speaking, and before even introducing herself or asking me my name, she said, "You're too tall." So let's take a look at that. Obviously, I can't change my height, and there's nothing I can do about that. So what she was saying was, your height makes me uncomfortable, and I would feel better if you were different than what you are. And so we have to be prepared for that negative feedback, those people who say, no, but this is one of those weaknesses you really have to fix. No, this is something that really isn't going to be effective. We have to be prepared for that, and when that happens, instead of saying, ooh, I'm on the wrong track, we say, ooh, I must be on the right track because I'm getting this resistance. One of the talks I do is called Dead Leaders, Lessons from the Lives and Violent Deaths of the World's Most Influential People. And we killed Gandhi, we killed Jesus, we killed Martin Luther King Jr., we killed JFK. We assassinated people that we now define as the greatest leaders in the history of the world because at the time there were people who were afraid of what those people were doing. There were people who wanted to stop what those people were doing. So resistance doesn't mean you're on the wrong track sometimes. Sometimes it means you're on the right track. So I think that's the biggest barrier that people have to be ready for, is that not everyone's going to be excited about the amplification. Not everybody's going to be excited about your new search for alignment. Not everyone's going to be excited when you start avoiding things. Not everyone's going to be excited when you start affiliating with people who have strengths where you have weakness, and maybe other people can't see it that way, and all they see is what's wrong with those people. And so we have to, again, be prepared to define things more internally than externally, because we are going to experience more resistance, especially at the beginning, and especially until maybe we prove to ourselves and maybe to family members, friends, other people that this will in fact work. They're going to be afraid because everyone's been taught at home, at school, and at work, you need to find your weaknesses and fix them in order to be successful. You need to fit in, you need to conform, you need to do what you're told, you need to not mess around, you need to get good grades, follow the rules in order to be successful. And when you start moving on a different track, everyone isn't going to go, woo-hoo. But also, there's plenty of people who will. There's plenty of people who will, and that's the thing. We'll start finding new connections, a new tribe, a new community sometimes as well. So we're going to get more resistance from some, but we're going to get more acceptance from others, and we're going to find a new group of people who's probably a better group of people sometimes. I don't think that means we lose everybody, but I think we'll discover support where we thought there wasn't any, or we'll discover that people are behind this mindset more than we might have thought ahead of time.
That's right. That's right. Well, and what's so curious about that is over time I've discovered is that when people are willing to push that limit and be able to look at themselves objectively, that's actually the point of their highest value. Yeah. So, when we look at leaders who are building companies that are based on their own value exchange, whatever they've either written a book or created systems or they have coaching or consulting expertise, and so I'll address that for a second, that when they can tie that to that area of what I might call their brilliance, that thing that just comes so naturally that they actually take it for granted. Doesn't everybody think this way? That actually those are the points that would indicate them to that highest value exchange where people will pay more because of that insight and wisdom and the acceleration that it will bring for them. Right. So as we begin to think about, one, the constraint, which is some people are going to resist this because it makes them uncomfortable, or and us getting comfortable with it ourselves. On the other hand, that magnetic side is that and giving ourselves permission just to press in to say where is that highest value, because that's actually when we're building a profitable, sustainable company, is looking at how to leverage all of those elements, which, again, is going to be really critical in 2015.
And from a business standpoint, I mean, if you're not getting any resistance, if you're not getting any negative feedback, then you're probably not doing anything that's worth noticing. You're probably invisible. So sometimes we think, okay, good, no one's upset with me. But also at the same time, then probably nobody's really, really excited about me and what I do either. So nobody's probably aware of it at all. I'm probably invisible. Or like you said, it kind of pushes us to average, right? We just kind of become in the middle, just kind of mediocre, because we're not finding and flaunting that true brilliance that we have because we're afraid of maybe turning some people off. But that's the other thing, is to look at some of the things that we see as success in reverse and pick successful companies, and then look at how, oh yeah, Google didn't exactly do everything the way everybody said that you should, and their founders aren't exactly perfect people, and Steve Jobs wasn't a perfect person, and he wasn't a perfect leader, and he doesn't run a perfect company, and yet there was a lot of success. So we have this mindset of well-rounded, well-balanced, perfection is what leads to success, and then in reality it's a lot more messy than that. And so recognizing that we can be a little bit messy, that our businesses can be a little bit messy, that no one's got it perfect, and that there is no such thing as perfect, I think can really change the way we go about doing things.
Right. I sure like that reminder, and actually that's the tribe that I'm speaking to these days as well. Is it really is, it's okay to be different and to really create your own rules that there is no perfect formula. You know, when you and I were sitting in the room and hearing the formula to millions of dollars, really that each of us have such a unique path in terms of how we interact with people that we're called to serve, whether it's our teams within our companies or whether it's the audience that we're called to serve, and the business models that come out of that there. And I love that, you know, it's messy. It's just messy sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think, I mean, I read a book one time about entrepreneurship, and I finished it, and I thought that was a good book, and it was well written, and there's some good advice. I'm never going to apply it, and I would never do my business like that because that's not me. And so the mistake that a lot of people make with their advice is, this worked for me, so it'll work for you, or this is the right way or the best way to do business, or you'll be more successful, whatever that means, if you do your business this way. Instead of simply saying, this is an approach that worked for me, this is an approach that fit with my strengths, with my style, with my personality, with my background, and maybe this will be helpful for you, but if not, there's a bunch of other paths to success. In systems theory, they call it equifinality. There's more than one way to get to the same spot, and we don't even really want to get to the same spot, but more than one way to get wherever it is that we want to go. And so I think that's what I would challenge people in 2015 is, don't get tied into, this book said that I have to be more structured. But I'm sort of creative and messy. This book said that I need to be more creative, but I'm sort of structured and detailed and pretty traditional. This book said that I need to be more flexible, but I'm pretty persistent and I don't like to change too much, and I like to drive something until I find a way to make it work. And so there's always another side. There's always somebody else who was successful doing the exact opposite of whatever that person said is going to be successful.
That's right. Well, before we move into just what else is going on with you, one of the questions that keeps coming up in my mind as I'm seeing some of the conversations that I've had recently, or I can see some of the conversations that may even come out of this, is that, you know, we've got people who are really driven on a path, and they are, like when you say amplify what's coming, they're challenging personality styles, or they're challenging with a new thought. And they want people to see something from their perspective, and doing more of that will alienate some people, which is okay. But, you know, I see that there's a need for a culture of honor and respect in everything that we do, and that I see that there's a season when we're stepping into our strengths that sometimes we become so egotistical and so narcissistic about, this is what's cool about me, and actually in doing so we're diminishing others, or that we've discovered the secret, so we're kind of, you know, here it is, and not allowing other people to show up. So how do you suggest that people kind of have that tidbit of wisdom as they are embarking on this?
No, it's a good point, because the same thing that's true about you, that your weaknesses are also strengths, is also true about other people. So instead of using that knowledge to lift you up and push other people down, if it lifts you up, then you can also use the same thing to lift other people up, to do the same for your spouse, to do the same for your children, to do the same for your coworkers, to do the same for your employees, to help them see the truth, help them uncover their strengths. And instead of, there's no real way to be congruent and consistent about, oh, all of my weaknesses are strengths, I don't need to change, I need to turn up the volume. Meanwhile, I tell everyone else to turn the volume down. So it's seeing that it's true for you, it's liberating for you, it's helped you succeed. I mean, that's part of my passion with the Freak Factor. And so then sharing that same thing with other people, sharing that with your spouse, sharing that with your children, sharing that with your business partners, whoever it happens to be, and saying, hey, I bet this is true for you as well, and I want to have a good and accurate understanding of who you are, and I want you to have a good and accurate understanding of who I am, so we can all work together more effectively. So yeah, I think it definitely is designed to sort of level the playing field and eliminate a lot of what goes on in relationships and organizations, which is, well, here's why I'm better. This says that you're good, but it doesn't necessarily talk about who's better. It's not a comparative thing.
Right.
We're good in different ways and at different things, and real success comes that affiliation step when we team up with people who have what we don't have, which too often looks like a weakness to us. Instead of saying, you know, I'm big picture, I'm not very detail oriented, I don't say, but I really need someone who's detail oriented. When I find that person, then I criticize them for not being big picture enough.
Yeah.
And so what I need to be able to do is see, I have this and I don't have that. And when I find somebody else who has it, recognize that it is in fact a positive instead of criticizing them for not seeing the forest for the trees or whatever it happens to be.
That's right. That's right. That's good. Yeah, it's just as I've been, I did a lot of work on this years ago when I started my company, and I was trying to work through that process myself, and then I've applied this over the years, and I see that it's almost like a maturity step. You know, when when we got a new toy, we kind of are all crazy about it. And I've been watching this in corporations at times where teams actually get so high on themselves that they're obnoxious to their managers, and you know, but part of it's just that maturity and awareness, self-awareness, because once you've owned and integrated into yourself, there's really no need to wave the banner about it. You just show up and be it. You just be it. You don't have to.
Well, and I think not only that, but I think the real understanding of this in my presentations, part of what I do is I spend a lot of time making fun of myself. Because if it is true that weaknesses are also strengths, that there's an upside that goes with the downside, then I don't have to be afraid to hide those things anymore. I just put them right out there and say, I'm not good at this. I don't do this well. I'm not as healthy as I could be. I make bad decisions sometimes. I have some skills that I'm lacking. I have some personality characteristics that aren't always endearing to other people. Instead of having to pretend we're someone we're not, again, this isn't just about focusing on the upside. This is about admitting openly the downside, because we're not worried about what anybody thinks anymore. We're not worried about trying to impress people. I mean, one of the stories I tell in my presentation is I'd gotten out of shape, and I'd been running marathons, but then I'd kind of stopped running and started eating too much. And one day my 2-year-old asked me if I, had a baby in there, asked me if I was pregnant because my belly was so big. I tell that story in every presentation. I'm not trying to act like I'm perfect, and I think that's a way to connect with people, that's a way to connect with customers, that's a way to build relationships, is to be a person who's honest, not just about the upside, but also about the downside, honest about what's truly there, instead of trying, this isn't about, in my mind, only focusing on what's good, it's about acknowledging that there's bad things there as well.
That's right.
And yet not worrying about them and not trying to hide them, and I think they lose a little bit of their power when we stop trying to hide them and we're happy to bring them into the light.
That's the truth. Boy, that is the truth. Anything we bring into the light absolutely loses its edge, for sure. Yeah. This has sure been fun. Now, you've got a couple things coming up, and I wanted just to mention, I mentioned about that, being able to take a look at yourself and connect your strengths and your brilliance and your experiences to your secret sauce outcome. You can actually get a download at findtheyoufactor.net, which will actually just give you an ebook on the discovery guide to find out what's cool about you. So feel free to grab that. But Dave has some events coming up, and also we want to direct you to his website. So David, why don't you tell us about the Strength Summit coming up?
Yeah, so it's called the Strength Summit 2.0. It's in Chicago. It's on February 13th. We'll be walking through the Freak Factor assessment, the Strengths Weakness assessment, showing you how they're connected. Also speaking alongside a guy who's an Olympic silver medalist and has an amazing story of how this is true in real life, how they tried to fix his weaknesses in speed skating, and they actually made him worse instead of better, and he left the Olympic Training Center, pursued his own method, which focused on maximizing his strengths instead of minimizing his weakness, and he ended up setting a world record in the Olympic trials and then winning a silver medal. So we're doing a half-day session where you not only do the assessment, but you also have friends, coworkers, other people do the assessment as well to sort of get a 360 report and understand your strengths and weaknesses in a new way. Also, if you go to my website, drendall.com, you can sign up to become part of Freak Nation, and you'll get the assessment. You can do that with yourself. You can share it with your kids, maybe your coworkers, whoever it happens to be. There's also a bunch of free ebooks and videos and things like that. So you sign up, you'll start getting some cool stuff once a week.
That's fun. That's fun. Well, and what I love is the humor that you bring and the humility that you bring to be able to say, we can talk about those things that aren't that great about us, or that we feel like we've always tried to kind of hide as our weaknesses, or even to start conversations, well, I should do better at that, to really just say, you know what, I'm not going to do better at that. I mean, that was really one of my epiphanies when I started the consulting, is I'm not going to stop writing. I'm not going to stop speaking. I'm not going to, how can I do more of that? And less of those things that make me feel bad about myself. And for those of you that just in life are feeling like, gosh, I just can't seem to get my hands around this, is to say, what can I do more of that I love to do, that brings me juice and joy, what seems to be my natural tendency, that I want to be able to do these things, or the things I excel at, and just have some fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dave, do you have any closing comments for our audience?
Well, I think one of the things we talk about in my seminars, I think sometimes people listen to this and they say, well, can't we change though? Can't I become a more organized person? Can't I become a more flexible person? And I think it misses the point of whether you could or couldn't. The question is, well, why should you? And when you're trying to become more of something else that you're not, why are you throwing away whatever it is that you already are? And why would that be more valuable than this? So one of the things I try to explain is that we can't turn ourselves into someone else, but we can become more of who we are. And I think that's the real goal. Is we can change, we can improve, we can get better. I can become a better speaker, I can become a better entrepreneur, I can become a better, more effective communicator. I can become more of who I am. I don't need to get better at sitting still, being quiet, doing what I'm told, fitting in, following the rules, being a team player, for example. I can become a better entrepreneur, I can become a better solo artist. I don't need to become a better team player. And so recognizing that we can change, this isn't saying stop. It's just saying if you're going to try to change, why not direct those efforts to an area where you already have ability, you already have interest, you already have momentum, and you already have the highest potential for success. So we need to stop trying to change who we are and try to become more of who we are.
That's right. I love it. I started using this about a year and a half ago, is that your compensation, or your ability to earn, is directly related to your ability to lead others, or to deliver outcomes, experiences, or implement processes that bring value to others. So when we begin to look at it in that way and say, gee whiz, how can I either make more, do more, have more impact, and we direct into that vein, everyone wins. Everyone wins.
Absolutely.
Everyone wins. Well, we're wishing you a happy 2015, and thank you so much for your time, David, today, and your wisdom and insight, and we look forward to getting into the Freak Nation as well. So let's have some fun with Sayonara today, and we'll be posting some links in the event site so you can get on David's website, as well as get your download for the secret sauce.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kathie. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, David.